Samsung's Gear S2 was one of last year's best received smartwatches, with shoppers responding to its circular face, stylish design, and convenient rotating bezel wheel control. And while past generations of Samsung smartwatches have made some pretty serious leaps in functionality and design, this time Samsung seems to think it's onto something. This year, the manufacturer is out with a new Gear S3 that doesn't reinvent the smartwatch, but instead refines it, extending its feature set, honing its design in response to user feedback, and offering a much-appreciated boost to battery life. At first glance, the Gear S3 Frontier and Gear S3 Classic both look like the earlier Gear S2 Classic, but these new models are appreciably bigger. Shoppers told Samsung they wanted larger smartwatches, and the companies responded with this pair of options, each measuring 46 by 49mm sans strap. Display size also grows slightly, up to 1.3 inches from last year's 1.2, and adds new Gorilla Glass SR Plus protection. The new Gear S3s are heavier and thicker than the Gear S2, and the new 12.9mm thick construction affords Samsung the opportunity to increase battery size to 380 mAh, effectively adding an extra day of operational life between charges. If you do forget to keep the battery topped up, the Gear S3 won't leave you high and dry, and at 5% battery remaining, an extra low power mode kicks in, keeping the watch telling time for another 10 hours while it disables its battery-hungry smart features. Samsung also finds new battery functionality balanced with a full color always-on display, letting you know the time without sacrificing on style. Both smartwatches return with IP68 ratings for protection against dust and water, and Samsung's pushing durability even further by making sure the Gear S3 can hold up to temperature extremes. Shoppers also told Samsung they wanted a smartwatch they could listen to, and last year the only Gear S2 that got a speaker was a cellular connected model for its speakerphone mode. With the Gear S3, a speaker and microphone pair is now standard on all models, supporting music playback and enabling speech-to-text input. Of the watch's 4GB of built-in storage, about 2GB will be free for music. Text input also improves with a new screen drawing mode, letting users trace out messages letter by letter on the Gear S3's face. While making its debut on these new models, Samsung also plans to port this feature to the Gear S2, along with other new software features that aren't dependent on any S3 exclusive hardware. Speaking of such hardware, the Gear S3 picks up magnetic secure transmission support for use with Samsung Pay, coming soon to the new smartwatch. That will allow users to make payments even at merchants lacking NFC point-of-sale terminals, just like you can already with flagship Galaxy phones. Availability of Samsung Pay on the Gear S3 will be market-dependent, though look for it to come to the US before the end of the year. We also see GPS reception graduate from a cellular-only S2 feature to one present on all S3 models, but don't worry, even as these S2 cell exclusives go mainstream, Samsung's still planning to release a version of the Gear S3 that has its own cellular radio for autonomous communication. Only the Gear S3 Frontier Edition is picking up this option though, while the Gear S3 Classic sticks with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Wristwatches can be intensely personal items, so it's only understandable that Samsung's working to make sure that shoppers have the customization options they need. Both the Gear S3 Frontier and Classic are crafted from stainless steel, but while the Classic has a clean, silvery steel look, the S3 Frontier adopts a more rugged black design. Samsung ships the Gear S3 Frontier with a sturdy silicone band, and the Gear S3 Classic with a fashionable leather strap, but your choices don't end there. Samsung's created a bunch of alternative strap options in an assortment of materials, and also recruited artist Arik Levy to create some band designs of his own, paired with corresponding watch faces. And since the Gear S3 uses a standard 22mm band, you can also pop on any compatible third-party strap that strikes your fancy. The rotating bezel is one of the original Gear S2's most interesting features, and Samsung's enhancing it for this year's Gear S3. The Frontier and Classic each have their own knurled bezel design, and Samsung's improving tactile feedback with more pronounced clicky magnetic stops around the ring. The bezel interface also evolves with quick directional controls for things like answering calls, a twist in the right direction triggers such actions, and allows for easy smartwatch control even when gloves might otherwise interfere with the Gear's touchscreen. Another quick-to-access feature is an emergency SOS alert mode. 3 taps on the Gear S3's back button sends the watch's location and a pre-programmed alert to designated contacts. Sales of the Gear S3 should get started sometime in October, though Samsung hasn't zeroed in on a specific date just yet. And that cellular connected Gear S3 Frontier is also out there somewhere over the horizon, even as full details on its availability remain elusive. Thanks for watching our hands-on with the new Samsung Gear S3 Frontier and Gear S3 Classic, and keep checking in with PhoneArena for all the rest of the new hardware making its debut at IFA 2016.